My name is Mutlatsi, yes, also known as Maziaga Kotuga. The name is Mutlatsi Sibego, also known as Maziaga Kotuga, and also known as Bafana Ngongwan. Why all these names? Let me give you the background. I was born a Sibego, my father was born a Sibego, my grandfather was born a Sibego, but my great-grandfather was a Ngongwan. Long story, we will touch on it on some other time. Presently, just want to talk to you about a subject that's presently dominating the social media, and everyone is talking about it left, right, and center. The issue of spirituality, specifically African spirituality. When you turn on the social media, you will find, powerful names such as Khalid Abdul Muhammad, such as Joshua Maponga, names such as and many others that you may have come across. So I just want to share with you my perspective on African spirituality. African spirituality is not something to be afraid of. People in Africa are used to Christianity and are afraid that African spirituality, therefore, is something of magic, of voodoo, something of witchcraft, which is what we actually were taught, because we were taught to remove ourselves from our identity, distance ourselves from our ways of life, hate our ways of life, and begin to demonize our ways of life to a point that we adopt the ways of the West. We adopt the ways of those who brought Christianity, adopt the ways of those who brought industrialization and urbanization, as it were, as though those things are foreign in Africa, which is not the case, by the way. Historically, when you look at the teachings of the Kemetic studies, you will discover that urbanization is an old concept. If you learn about the kingdom of Mapungubwe, you will find that urbanization is an old concept. It is just that people who are clans would then live in places that are highly vegetated. And it makes a lot of sense because Africans were able to get along with the environment and were able to function much properly with trees, with rivers, with grass and vegetation all around because of livestock, because of water, because of prayers, and because we needed timber as well to be able to function properly. Now, that it may appear to have been primitive is another concept altogether, which we will debate some other time. Now, let's come back to the concept of spirituality. Unfortunately, African spirituality is looked at in comparison to other religions, and specifically the Abrahamic religions. Why do I say Abrahamic? I say Abrahamic because Christianity finds its foundations in Judaism, which finds its foundation in Abraham. And then Islam, on the other hand, also finds its foundations in Abraham. Remember, Abraham is the father of Ishmael and the father of Isaac. So the legend goes. And because the both sons were of the same man, they went the two directions, so the legend goes. We do know, though, that the two brothers were actually very close. At the point of their father's death, they were able to come together and bury their father working together. However, the world wants to separate. The world wants to fight. The world wants things to be apart. And so the siblings' rivalry continues up to the point of religions. Now, people want to therefore look at spirituality, the African spirituality, in comparison to what they don't understand is that African spirituality gave birth to Judaism and gave birth to Islam. That you would not have Islam and Judaism without African spirituality, because African spirituality dates way back to the kingdom of Kemet. Kemet is what the Greeks named later on Egypt. But we know that it actually was called Kemet in the beginning. Now, in Kemet, there is a practice of Ma'at in Kemet where the things like the laws of Ma'at, which gave birth to what we know now as 10 Commandments. And of course, I am not in a position to debate the issue of whether it was the hand of God that wrote by the finger on the tables of stones, as the Bible states in the book of Exodus chapter 31. What I do know for a fact, though, is that with the Kemetic claims, there are archaeological proofs of all the things that the Kemetic studies make claim of. Whereas other claims don't have proof in them. These ones have historical proof, and you can go to the temples of Ma'at in Egypt. I had a privilege of going there, and you are able to see all those things that one is talking about. So in as far as African spirituality is concerned, it should not be looked at ideologically and philosophically in comparison to Christianity, but it must be looked at separately, all by itself, as one thing that can be studied without being compared, because it can never be compared. It stands gigantically all by itself, not shoulder to shoulder with the rest. Everything else is the offspring of African spirituality. While Christianity teaches us that there is a creator of the universe, who is God, who is high above all things, who sits on the throne, and while he sits on the throne, he's got his angels all around him, surrounding him, and the book of Revelation talks about the 24 elders also sitting with him, and the book of Daniel talks about him as well, the concept of heaven. The book of Isaiah also talks about the concept of heaven, how he saw God in the year that King Uzziah died, sitting on the throne high and lifted up. So the concept of God is that he is high up there and he's sitting on the throne. Now, the fact that the information that is in Christianity and Judaism is founded on the teachings of Kemet in Egypt does not make that information false. It simply means that it was adopted and then it was made as though it is original with them. So it still remains an information that you can rely on. There's part of it that was tweaked, part of it that was changed so that it becomes different. Otherwise, it is the same. So in Kemet, the teachings are that God created a human being from the dust of the ground. In the Bible, God created the human being from the dust of the ground. And in Judaism also, God created human being from the dust of the ground. And this is why I think then people fall into the trap of comparing African spirituality with Christianity and Judaism so as to compete with the rest. Here is the foundation of African spirituality. It is family. It begins with me. Who am I? I am Temba's son. Who is Temba? Temba is Enoch's son. Who is Enoch? Enoch is the son to George. Who is George? George is a son to Spelane. Who is Spelane? Spelane is a son to Manganyane. Who is Manganyane? Manganyane is a son to Jive. Who was Jive? Jive was a son to Beshwana. And then the list goes on and 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 on until it gets to the creator of the universe. So it all begins with the one who made all things and then made Adam, and Adam gave birth to, and then gave birth to, and then the offspring gave birth to, their own offspring gave birth to, until it got to who I am, me. So African spirituality says, recognize that you are somebody's son. And that son is connected to another parent who is your grandparent. And the connection goes all the way back until it gets to God. Now, in the space in Africa where I am, which is South Africa, we have the Ngunis here dominating the space. And as a Nguni, the God that we serve, we refer to him as Umvelinqangi. Okay? Umvelinqangi, otherwise also known as Unkulunkulu. Now, those who call him Unkulunkulu were trying to say Umkhulu womkhulu, because in the Nguni language, particularly isiZulu, Umkhulu is my grandfather. And so the grandfather of all grandfathers, according to the Nguni language, is God, the creator of all things. He's a parent of all the grandparents, and therefore is referred to as Umkhulu womkhulu. Unfortunately, when the Westerners, the settlers arrived, tried to pronounce it, they couldn't, and they just ended up saying Unkulunkulu. So the African spirituality says, God is the author of all things. Between him and me are my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents. And without them, I would not have known him, because they are the ones who taught me about him. And so when I begin to speak to him, I first must recognize those who introduced me to him and those whom he gave me to, so that they raise me. And it therefore is an important chain to connect. You disconnect the chain, all your prayers are just nothing. It's a waste. You're wasting your time. You're talking to oblivion. You're talking to nothingness. You cannot disrespect your parents and then expect God to bless you. You have got to have that connection. It is an important connection. Number two, in the African spirituality, we do not worship our ancestors. We don't do that. I do not know of anyone who worships the ancestor. Africans do not worship ancestors. Unfortunately, this has been used against us for a very long time, and has been used against us too many times, and has been used against us so as to ridicule who we are, ridicule our faith, so that we throw it away and adopt that which is not ours. We do not worship our ancestors, but we recognize them as our parents. And we recognize them as those who introduced us to the creator of the universe. So, thirdly, worship is not just about setting up an altar and praying to the all-knowing, all-wise God. Worship is also about respecting your parents. The Bible says that honor your mother and your father so that your days may be long. That is worship. It is an instruction from the God who created all things that you must honor your parents. It is an instruction. Number two, the Bible also says that don't call your brother a fool. That is worship. And your brother is part of the family. Remember I said to you earlier, African spirituality is about family. So you need to take care of family and respect your parents. And if you do that, then you are in a better position to find yourself worshiping truthfully, rather than to go and lift up your heads to the sky and talk to a known God after you've disrespected your brother, after you've abandoned your brother or your sister, after you've walked away from your brother and your sister, after you've undermined your brother and your sister, and you think God will listen to you. You disrespect your parents, you don't recognize your parents, you distance yourself from your parents, you disconnect from your parents, and then expect that God is going to listen to you. It doesn't work like that. African spirituality says, fix the home front. Then the unknown is going to have time for you. Thank you very much, my friends. We'll talk again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.